Who matters here? Why is international law more important than national law? Why are foreign courts more powerful than our allegedly sovereign parliament? The bottom line is that if a country cannot police its own borders and cannot decide who enters and who does not, then it's not fit for purpose. It's not a proper country at all. An uncharacteristically bouncy Rishi Sunak today warned the House of Lords not to block the legislation after it was backed by MPs.
It's now time for the Lords to pass this bill too. This is an urgent national priority. The treaty with Rwanda is signed and the legislation which deems Rwanda a safe country has been passed unamended in our elected chamber. There is now only one question. Will the opposition in the appointed House of Lords try and frustrate the will of the people as expressed by the elected House, or will they get on board and do the right thing? It's as simple as that.
But does the Prime Minister really have the political will, the balls of steel, to stop the boats? The EU may have given up on border control, but why should we? Wasn't that the point of Brexit? And spare me the pearl-clutching from the pompous, well-heeled establishment who are obsessed about what the world will think of us. This crisis is bigger than worrying about what lawyers in Strasbourg are going to say. There's a lot of talk of our standing internationally. Well, I care about our standing nationally. There's lots of talk of our reputation overseas. Well, I care about our reputation at home. I care what you think, and you are not happy. Our reputation is that tens of thousands of people, some of whom it was reported last year are suspected terrorists, break the law to reach our shores. Our reputation is one of a country which has lost control and where international gangsters who make many millions from trafficking human beings in what has become a humanitarian disaster are actually the ones in charge. What's particularly troubling is that it's not even our biggest problem. When you combine illegal and legal net migration, you're looking at not far off 1 million people a year entering the country. And people don't even realise that this is happening. Polling shows the public underestimate the scale of net migration by almost 10 times. A survey conducted this week suggested Brits thought the legal net migration figure is about 70,000 per year. It's 10 times that, a population the size of a major city every year. The establishment in this country, they don't struggle to get a GP appointment. They've got lovely houses with sprawling gardens. They don't live down the road from a migrant hotel, and they're insulated from the consequences of unchecked mass migration and how it's hurting the real economy, real communities and real people. It's abundantly clear that the governing elite have no serious interest in stopping the boats or tackling eye-watering levels of legal net migration. We're being taken for mugs, and the only answer now is a profound political revolution. The Tories have failed, as will Labour. For Britain, the choice is now clear: change or die. Before I bring my brilliant panel in, let's head to the Conservative Deputy Chairman, Brendan Clark-Smith. Mr Clark-Smith, thank you for joining us after what's been a tumultuous couple of days. Why did you change your mind last night and support the legislation?
Thanks, Mark. Well, I'm not the Deputy Chairman anymore. I had to resign, unfortunately, with Lee as well. That was a decision that we made. Of course, there's collective responsibility when you're in positions like that. If you don't vote for the government's full agenda, then you're expected to resign or be fired, and they are the rules, and we accept that. I mean, the issue that we've got really is that we've legislated twice already on this. We're desperate to solve the problems that you've just been describing, really. So we wanted to put some safeguards in there and to make it watertight. And these are things that we've suggested in the past. These are things that I've suggested on GB News, things I've written articles on. And, I just think in terms of being consistent and credibility for ourselves, Lee and I felt that we had to support those amendments. And that's why we resigned. Now, obviously, we've got a situation where the bill has gone through unamended as well. Now, it's not quite a binary thing where you're voting on whether you want something to happen or not happen. The argument here is whether the bill is going to work. It's not whether it's stronger or weaker or whatever. It's just a case of, is it going to get those planes off the tarmac? And that's kind of where we are now.
Why have you taken a different course to Lee Anderson, who at least took a principled stand and decided to abstain? Why did you actually back the legislation, which previously you said wasn't going to work?
Well, I think the thing is, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge. Even with the legislation that we're proposing with the amendment, we're not going to know if that would have worked until that actual plane takes off. So, the biggest worry is that we have no legislation at all, which is the worst of all worlds. So I'm prepared to listen with that. I'm prepared to see whether this goes through the courts and whether it's successful or not. I really hope I'm wrong with that, and I hope it does work. I hope the Lords actually, they don't try and kick this into touch and delay because people at home want to see this sorted and they want it done. So some of my colleagues voted for, some voted against, some abstained on it, all for a variety of reasons. What we all agree on is that we want the planes to take off. We want to stop this illegal migration where people, quite frankly, are taking the mickey out of our system. We want to stop a situation where courts, foreign courts abroad, they're making all these decisions. Now, the last time a plane got stopped by one of these pajama sort of rules that gets thrown out there, we don't even know who the judge is. Because the ECHR, they've given themselves these powers. Nobody else has given them. They've just taken them. And, they have the control now. We said we were going to take back control. So if this doesn't work and if we don't get the planes off to Rwanda, I think when we come to the general election, we need to have another discussion. And that's about our relationship with the ECHR, whether we can still have that, the Human Rights Act, the whole Blair era legal framework that we're under. Now, I'd like to change that anyway. But certainly at the moment, what we're being told is this is as far as we can go within the parameters we've got. So I want to get the planes off the ground. That's why I supported it in the end.
Absolutely. And Brendan, appreciate you coming on to tell us about this. It was very exciting and it must have been a proud moment when you became deputy chairman of the party. But has this 24-hour coup been a misfire? Chaos for the government, lots of reputational damage for the Prime Minister, and you're out of a job, but the bill went through anyway. What was the point?
I think it was important to make that argument there. It's not a case of saying that I can say I told you so if it doesn't work at the end. I mean, we genuinely wanted to make the changes there. Now, we will have colleagues who will argue the opposite and say actually what we're doing made it less likely the planes were going to take off for various legal reasons. And I respect that opinion as well. And I really hope that they're right with that. But what we thought is, if you don't put that pressure on, if you don't sometimes take it to the brink, in our case, where we ended up having to resign from our positions in the end, then people don't take you seriously. And sometimes, you have to push it as we did with Brexit in the end.
But briefly, Brendan, what information changed between you rejecting this new legislation and then voting for it?
Well, I think this is the technical side of it, Mark. So we didn't actually reject the legislation. So it had already gone through on second reading. People voted that through. So the general aims of the bill is something that actually we all agree with. We're all fine with that. We're all happy with it. Okay. It's the technical details. So what we actually voted on were amendments. So if you imagine we think 90% of the bill's fine, but actually we need to add, this part and this part to actually make it better. So we were voting on things to make it better. Now, unfortunately, if you're on the payroll as we are, then you can't do that. You can't propose your own. But I
understand, Brendan, you were quoted as saying that the bill was unworkable earlier in the week. Is it now workable?
It's not so much whether it was unworkable as the fact that I wasn't sure it was watertight, I think, is the main thing I was using. And we know what lawyers are like. We know what these courts are like. And I wanted to cut off all those avenues there. And that's what Robert Jenrick, that's what Cash were trying to do. So that's why we wanted the amendments, Mark. Doesn't mean the whole piece of legislation normally is necessarily bad, but we wanted to make it better. And that was what the argument was about this week.
OK, well, last but not least, Brendan, what is the timeline for flights to Rwanda? You're always really direct and honest with me. I always appreciate that. You're a sure-footed politician. Will there be planes in the sky before a likely November general election, or will it be pigs flying?
Well, we wanted it in spring originally. Prime Minister said he wanted it in spring. Now, the problem that we've got is that it's now in the Lords. Now, I've got no idea how long the Lords are going to take with this, whether they're going to be silly with it, some people, and try and delay it. And we spoke about the will of the people, and there are some who don't care about that. You know, we've seen that previously. But I've spoken to a lot of very good peers, Conservative peers, some other peers in the Lords who actually, they agree with us. They're passionate about this as well, and they want to sort it. So quicker the Lords can get it through, quicker we can start getting those planes off, and hopefully that'll happen. Now, if it doesn't, then obviously we're going to have a conversation about it. And I think when the general election comes, there's a few other changes to our legal system.
I mean, it sounds to me, Brendan, like you agree with Reform UK's position on stopping the boats, not the Conservative government. So any chance that you'll be joining Reform UK and running on that ticket at the next election?
Well, of course, the Rwanda plan's our policy, Mark. So, and the thing is, you've got to deliver it, and it's us or it's the Labour Party at the end of the day. And I see Richard Tice was very kind to Lee Anderson and I, but I'm a lifer. I've been a party member for 25 years. It's like my football team for me. So, no, I'm very much a Conservative for life, I think.
Do you categorically rule out standing for Reform UK at the next election?
Me? No, I'm very much the Conservative MP for Bassett Law, the Conservative candidate, and I hope to be for many years to come, Mark.
Brilliant to see you on the show. Brendan, thank you so much for making the time. We know it's been a busy 24 hours for you. My thanks there to the Conservative MP, Brendan Clark-Smith.